Before we begin the story, if you love cinematic human versus alien epics, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. What would you do if the universe's deadliest predator stood between you and survival? Now settle in, because this isn't just another space story. This is the tale of the day a man met a monster, and neither ever walked away the same. The rain on Tarsus 4 wasn't rain at all. It was acid mist, soft as breath, that hissed when it touched metal. Captain Elias Ward didn't mind. The pain told him he was still alive. His armor's filters whined with every inhale, cycling the burnt air of the shattered jungle moon, while his left arm hung dead at his side, fractured or worse. Around him lay what used to be his unit, blackened suits, hollow visors, and the faint blue gleam of Terran identification chips blinking like tiny dying stars in the dirt. His dropship had gone down 6 hours ago. The distress beacon was gone, the comms were fried, and the sky burned with the orbiting wreckage of what had once been the Terran Forward expedition. No rescue would come. Not here. Not on a moon the Galactic Council had marked Red Zone for one reason: Zyran territory. He'd read about them. Apex predators. Hunters that could silence motion sensors and tear through titanium hulls. Even the Council feared them. A species so perfectly built for destruction that every other intelligent race had agreed. No contact, no containment, no colonization. Elias tightened his grip on the pulse rifle and checked his HUD, battery at 12%. He should have been conserving power, but the sounds in the trees were getting closer. Heavy steps, deliberate, too slow for the acid wind to mask. He found shelter in the ruins of an old research outpost. The walls were little more than charred beams and scorched panels, but it gave him a line of sight. He took a knee, forcing his breathing to steady, and waited. A shape moved in the fog. At first he thought it was smoke until it turned its head and two eyes, amber vertical slit like molten gold, cut through the haze. The Zyran stepped into view. It was enormous, at least 3 meters tall, covered in dark carapace ridged with scars that looked earned, not grown. Its breathing was slow, predatory, measured. And yet, there was a tremor in its stance. One of its hind legs dragged, leaving a trail of blue-black ichor across the ground. It was wounded. Elias froze. His visor's AI whispered, Zyran biosignature confirmed. Recommendation: flee or terminate. But he couldn't flee. His leg was barely holding weight, and the only way out was past it. The creature saw him. They locked eyes, man and monster, and time seemed to stop. Elias raised his weapon. The Zyran's gaze dropped to the rifle, then back to his eyes. It didn't lunge. Didn't roar. Just watched. The silence pressed harder than any sound. The creature lowered itself onto its forelimbs and exhaled, a low guttural sound that wasn't a growl, but something closer to exhaustion. Elias took a hesitant step forward. "This is insane," he muttered. "You'd kill me in one swipe." The Zyran tilted its head. Its mandibles flexed slightly, but it didn't move. Elias saw the shard then, metal deep in its chest, pulsing with the faint blue of an energy cell fragment. Every instinct screamed to back away, but something older than fear made him stay. Maybe pity. Maybe madness. He dropped his rifle and reached for his medkit. The Zyran's eyes narrowed. It tensed, claws half raised, then relaxed again when he didn't attack. Slowly, carefully, Elias knelt before the creature. The acid rain hissed louder now, eating through the roof. He could smell the Zyran's blood, ozone and iron and something sharp like lightning. He lifted the shard with trembling fingers, braced his boot against the ground, and pulled. The alien roared, not in fury but pain. The sound shook the ruins, rippling through the air until birds exploded from the trees outside. Elias fell backward, the metal fragment clattering away. The Zyran staggered but didn't strike. It blinked once, slow, deliberate, then lowered its head as though acknowledging the act. Elias stared. "You're welcome," he said, voice barely audible. The creature's response was to collapse beside him. The ground quaked under its weight. For a moment he thought it was dead. Then he heard it breathing, steady, rhythmic, alive. He exhaled, the adrenaline leaving him weak. He should leave. No. While it was unconscious. Before it woke up hungry. Instead, he found himself dragging a half-broken panel over the ruined roof to shield them from the rain. He patched his own arm with what was left of the medgel, then glanced at the alien beside him. Its chest rose and fell, its pulse light flickering in the low glow of his suit. He saw the scars, some new, some ancient, and realized this was no mindless beast. It had lived through wars, maybe civilizations. And yet it lay here, vulnerable, beside a man it could have killed. Elias whispered, "Guess we're both stranded." He leaned back against the wall and let exhaustion take him. Hours passed. The acid rain softened into mist, the jungle hum returning. When he woke, the Zyron was gone. He froze, scanning the area. No sound. No movement. His weapon was gone too, drag marks in the dirt leading toward the trees. "Great," he muttered. "Saved your life and you steal my gun." Then he heard it. A low grunt. The Zyron stepped out of the shadows, rifle clutched in one claw. It dropped the weapon at his feet. Elias blinked. "You brought it back." The alien straightened, shoulders rising and falling with slow, deliberate breaths. It pointed one claw toward the jungle, then at him. A warning. Or an invitation? Before Elias could respond, the sky flashed. A thunderous boom rolled across the canopy. He looked up, 3 council drones descending, blue light sweeping the surface. They were scanning for biosignatures. For him. Elias cursed under his breath. If they found him with a Zyron, he'd be vaporized on sight. The predator moved first. With astonishing speed for its size, it grabbed Elias by the arm, carefully, not crushing, and pulled him deeper into the ruins. It pressed him against the wall, massive body shielding his heat signature. The drones passed overhead, searchlights slicing through the night. One beam lingered too long, and Elias could feel his heart pounding against the alien's armored chest. The Zyron didn't move, didn't breathe. The beam drifted on. The drones vanished into the distance. Elias stayed still a moment longer, then looked up at the creature that had just saved his life, for the second time. It looked down, unblinking. For a heartbeat, neither moved. The world around them was silent but for the faint hiss of the mist. Then, as if the act meant nothing, the Zyron stepped back and gestured once toward the jungle again before limping into the darkness. Elias wanted to call out, to ask why. But his throat caught. He picked up his rifle and stared into the fog until the last trace of the creature disappeared. He should have been terrified. But all he felt was empty. As the acid mist thickened again, he opened his wrist log and recorded a single line. Encountered Class Omega Zyron. Didn't kill me. I think it's hurt. Or maybe, curious. Either way, it's not over. He closed the log, checked his dwindling oxygen reserves, and started walking in the direction the predator had gone. Whatever this was, madness, fate, or something stranger, it had begun. And deep in the jungle, unseen through the mist, 2 golden eyes waited for him to follow. The jungle on Tarsus 4 was louder now. The acidic mist had thinned, and with it came the alien life that thrived in the silence between storms, glimmering spores, serpents with translucent skin, and trees that whispered in the wind like they remembered every death that had happened beneath them. Elias moved carefully through the undergrowth, pulse rifle held low, visor cracked but functional. His oxygen levels blinked a warning every few minutes. He ignored it. His mind was fixed on the tracks ahead, massive 3-toed prints that sank deep into the mud, each step heavy and deliberate. The Zyron had gone this way. He didn't know why he was following it. Survival instinct said to head for higher ground and try to ping a distress signal. Logic said to avoid the galaxy's deadliest predator. But logic had stopped guiding him the moment that creature had shielded him from the drones. Something in that act had burned itself into his thoughts. It hadn't been dominance. It hadn't been instinct. It had been choice. He came upon a clearing where the forest floor was torn apart, the earth blackened and smoldering. A half-dismantled Terran probe lay in pieces, its metal shell melted and reworked into a rough shelter of sorts. And there it was, the Zyron crouched beside a pool, cleaning its claws with slow precision. Its wounds were sealed over with some kind of hardened secretion, glowing faintly under the mistlight. Elias stepped out, weapon raised but not aimed. "You built this?" he asked, more to himself than it. The Zyron turned its head. The gold eyes fixed on him, pupils narrowing to slits. It didn't reach for a weapon, it didn't need one, but it didn't attack either. Instead, it made a low, rolling sound that vibrated through the clearing. It wasn't hostile. It was almost curious. Elias lowered the rifle. "I'm not here to fight." He gestured toward the shelter, then to his chest. "Stay." The creature tilted its head again. He couldn't tell if it understood the words, but it seemed to understand the tone. It exhaled softly, a sound like wind through stone, and turned back to its work, rearranging metal plates into a windbreak. Elias took that as permission. He moved closer, keeping a respectful distance, and began setting up his own camp opposite the creature. The air shimmered faintly with residual static from the probe's reactor core, enough to power his visor's light and his medical scanner. He patched the deeper cuts on his arm, checking the readings. He could feel the Zyron's gaze on him the entire time. You're watching me like I'm the strange one, Elias muttered. A soft click came from the Zyron's throat, something between amusement and acknowledgement. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was layered with observation. Elias studied the alien's every motion, the deliberate way it flexed its claws before touching anything metallic, the careful spacing of its breathing, the way it seemed to track every sound in a 50-meter radius. Predatory perfection, and yet, when its gaze met his, there was no hunger in it. Only awareness. As night settled, he risked lighting a small plasma fire. The Zyron flinched at the first burst of light but didn't retreat. Elias caught the glint of reflection in its eyes. Fear? No. Wariness. The creature edged closer, lowering itself to the ground, clearly drawn by the heat. Elias offered a piece of ration meat. The Zyron sniffed, then ignored it. Instead, it reached into the pool beside them, speared something writhing and pale, a native eel-like creature, and tossed it toward the fire. Elias watched it cook, the smell sharp and metallic. When the Zyron made a low sound, he realized it expected him to eat first. He hesitated, then took a cautious bite. The flavor was bitter, electric, but not poisonous. The Zyron made a satisfied rumble. For the first time since the crash, Elias laughed, a single breath of disbelief. Guess that's your way of saying thanks. The Zyron blinked slowly, and the corners of its mouth shifted just slightly as if mirroring his tone. The night deepened and the fire's glow softened into embers. Elias leaned back against a broken support beam, exhaustion catching up with him. He spoke quietly, half to himself. Terran Command thinks your species can't be reasoned with. They say you kill for sport. The Zyron tilted its head. Elias continued, voice low. But you helped me. Saved me. Twice. Doesn't fit the story, does it? The alien's chest expanded, and it made a deep, resonant sound. Not quite a word, but a pattern rising and falling like language without translation. Elias listened, trying to understand. He pointed to himself. Elias. Then at the Zyron. You. The creature paused, then tapped its own chest with two claws. A vibration followed, a low note that echoed softly in the air. Elias tried to mimic it. The sound came out rough, human vocal cords too clumsy for the tone. The Zyron made a softer noise, laughter unmistakably this time. Yeah, I know, Elias said with a grin. Accent's terrible. For a fleeting second, the vast gulf between man and beast didn't seem so wide. The peace didn't last. A rustle cut through the clearing. The Zyron's head snapped toward the trees, body lowering instantly into a crouch. Elias raised his rifle, visor scanning. Movement, 6 signatures. Small, fast circling. Not Zyron. Not council drones either. Raiders. Salvage scavengers. They picked up the same wreck signal Elias had. Laser sights swept through the trees. Drop your weapon, Terran, a voice barked through the static. You've got one chance before we melt your bones. Elias's stomach clenched. He recognized the accent, pirate cells from the outer reach. They'd strip him for parts and the Zyron, worse. He opened his mouth to respond, but the Zyron moved first. It vanished into the dark like smoke. A heartbeat later, screams cut through the night, wet, abrupt, silenced one by one. Gunfire flared, shadows moved too fast to follow, and then nothing. Just the dripping of blood onto acid-soaked leaves. Elias stared into the dark, rifle trembling in his grip. When the Zyron returned, its carapace was streaked with fresh burns, and one of its claws bled a strange iridescent blue. It dropped a salvager's weapon at his feet. He swallowed hard. You protected me again. The Zyron said nothing. It simply sank to its haunches and began cleaning the wound with precise, deliberate motions. Elias knelt, opening his medkit. The creature's eyes flicked toward him, wary but not hostile. Let me help. It didn't move as he approached, though he could feel the heat radiating off its body, smell the faint ozone of its blood. He applied sealant gel along the wound, the chemical reaction hissing softly. The Zyron's muscles tensed, but it didn't strike. When he was done, he sat back, heart pounding. You could have left. You could have killed me. Why stay? The Zyron looked at him for a long moment, then turned its gaze toward the sky, through the shattered canopy where stars burned cold and distant. Elias followed its gaze. Home, he guessed. A slow exhale, almost a sigh. He realized then that maybe it wasn't trapped here any more than he was. Maybe it had chosen to remain for reasons he couldn't yet grasp. The rain began again, soft, whispering against the canopy. The fire hissed, dying to smoke. The Zyron shifted closer, the ground trembling faintly under its weight. Elias didn't move away. He was too tired to fear, too curious to sleep. In the dim light, he saw the alien's breathing slow, its eyes half closed but still watchful. There was something oddly peaceful about it, a creature built for killing, resting beside him like a sentinel guarding its own. Elias activated his wrist recorder, voice barely above a whisper. Day 2. Predator hasn't left. Fights off scavengers, guards the perimeter, even shares food. Maybe it's not about survival anymore. Maybe it's about choice. He shut off the log and leaned back, the exhaustion finally pulling him under. The sound of the rain mixed with the steady rhythm of alien breathing. When dawn came, the fire was gone, but the Zyron remained. It sat upright, watching the forest edge as if daring the world to come closer. Elias stirred, stretching his injured arm. You stood watch all night? The Zyron didn't look at him but made a low hum that vibrated through the ground. Elias smiled faintly. Guess that means you're sticking around? He didn't realize it yet, but something had shifted. No longer man and monster, no longer hunter and prey, just two survivors bound by something deeper than instinct. And as the sun broke through the acid clouds for the first time, painting the ruins in pale gold, a faint signal flickered on Elias's HUD, distant, mechanical, searching. Someone was coming. He looked at the Zyron, who raised its head toward the sky as if it already knew. The uneasy peace between them was ending. The morning air carried the hum of distant engines, faint but unmistakable. Elias had heard that sound too many times in too many war zones. It was the kind of vibration that meant precision, purpose, and death. The Galactic Council had found them. He crouched beside the Zyron's shelter, visor dimmed to avoid detection. The alien crouched across from him, perfectly still, golden eyes reflecting the faint pulses of light cutting through the jungle canopy. The drones moved in a wide grid, methodical and silent. Their scanners swept through the mist in rhythmic patterns, searching for the impossible, a human and an apex predator living in the same coordinates. Elias's pulse quickened. He tried his comms again, hoping to jam the frequency. Static. The council's lockout was complete. He glanced toward the Zyron, who hadn't moved. It didn't need translation to understand the danger. Its claws flexed, cutting shallow lines into the soil, but it remained silent. Council forces, Elias whispered. They'll kill you. And me. The Zyron's gaze shifted toward him. It made a deep, resonant tone that rippled through his armor, like a question. Elias shook his head. No, I'm not running without you. The alien tilted its head, watching him with that unreadable expression that was becoming familiar. Not human understanding, but recognition. Then without warning it moved. The jungle exploded into motion. Branches cracked as the Zyron launched upward, landing on a towering trunk and vanishing into the canopy. Elias ducked behind a half-buried support beam as a drone descended, its searchlight sweeping across the ruins. Its sensors locked onto his armor's Terran signal. He fired once, pulse rifle flashing, and the drone spiraled into the ground in a shower of sparks. But two more replaced it, their energy nets glowing electric blue. Before they could fire, the trees shook violently. The Zyron dropped from above, slamming into one drone with crushing force. Metal screamed as claws tore through armor plating. The second drone fired a containment bolt, striking the alien square in the chest. The shockwave knocked both predator and man backward. Elias's vision blurred as static filled his visor. He pushed himself up in time to see the Zyron rise again, smoke curling off its armor. It roared, not in rage but defiance. The sound was primal, ancient, carrying through the forest and up into the clouds. Every drone froze for a half-second. It was enough. Elias seized the moment, disabling the second drone with a short-range EMP grenade. He grabbed the Zyron's arm, tugging. We have to move. Together they ran. The jungle blurred around them. Trees flashed by, acid rain cutting small holes into Elias's suit as they sprinted through the ruins of a forgotten civilization. The Zyron led, moving with fluid speed even through pain. Its stride was wide and predatory, but it slowed just enough for him to keep up. Behind them, the sound of engines multiplied. Dropships. Not scavengers this time, military grade. The council wasn't sending a recovery team. They were sending an execution squad. They reached a ridge overlooking a valley of black stone and twisted vines. The Zyron stopped abruptly. Below, a dozen council troopers moved in formation, exosuits gleaming under the filtered light. At their center hovered a containment platform, chains of pure energy flickering, ready to ensnare the target. Elias felt the pit in his stomach harden. They came prepared. He crouched beside the Zyron, scanning the perimeter. The alien's breathing was shallow, the earlier shock still burning across its chest. He reached out instinctively, brushing away the residue with a cloth from his kit. The Zyran flinched, then stayed still. "You saved me twice," Elias whispered. "Guess it's my turn." The alien turned toward him, eyes narrowing in quiet recognition. It made a short, deliberate motion with its claw, 2 fingers pressed to its chest, then pointed at him. Elias didn't understand the gesture, but he nodded anyway. He moved down the slope while the Zyran stayed in the shadows. The troopers were methodical, scanning, adjusting, confident in their superiority. Elias crawled behind a fallen beam, disabling one soldier's motion sensor with a small magnetic pulse. The suit froze mid-step, giving him a narrow opening. He struck fast, silent, dragging the trooper down and shutting off his comms. He stripped the armor piece he needed, the signal scrambler, and slid it onto his own wrist. Instantly, his signature vanished from their scanners. He motioned upward toward the canopy. The Zyran moved like a ghost, repositioning above the patrol. Elias synced the comm to his helmet and whispered, "Now." The forest exploded. The Zyran dropped from above, landing in the middle of the squad, scattering soldiers like leaves in a storm. Plasma fire lit the clearing in pulses of white and blue. Elias joined in, striking from cover, disabling what he couldn't destroy. The air filled with the scent of ozone and burning vegetation. One soldier activated the containment array, and brilliant chains of energy shot out, wrapping around the Zyran's arms and legs. The alien struggled, muscles rippling, claws sparking against the restraints. The sound it made then was not a roar, it was grief, fury, and disbelief all at once. "Don't you touch it!" Elias shouted, charging forward. He fired his rifle until the battery drained, bullets tearing into the generator housing. The chains flickered but held. A trooper turned toward him, shouting, "Terran, stand down. You're under arrest for aiding a classified organism." Elias didn't answer. He slammed the butt of his rifle into the trooper's visor, shattering it. Sparks burst. He grabbed a fallen plasma grenade and hurled it toward the generator. The explosion tore through the air, knocking him off his feet. The chains disintegrated. The Zyran lunged free, crashing into the troopers with savage precision. No wasted motion, no mercy. Elias could barely track its speed. Within seconds, the clearing was silent except for the hum of burning circuitry. Elias pulled himself up, lungs burning. "We need to go before reinforcements arrive." But the Zyran wasn't listening. It stood among the wreckage, head tilted upward, eyes fixed on the sky. Elias followed its gaze and saw why. A massive shadow fell across the valley, a command vessel descending, its engines turning the mist into boiling waves. Dozens of drop pods broke off, streaking toward them. The council wasn't taking chances anymore. "Run!" Elias shouted. "Now!" The Zyran hesitated, watching him. It could have vanished into the jungle and survived. He knew it. But instead, it turned toward him, reached out, and caught his arm with surprising gentleness. The gesture said everything words could not. Then the ground erupted. Energy nets fell from the sky, enveloping them both. Elias tried to tear free, but the field burned against his armor. The Zyran thrashed, its claws slicing through one net before another replaced it. The field intensified, forcing them to the ground. Through the haze of pain, Elias heard mechanical footsteps approaching, council troopers in reinforced exosuits. A tall figure stepped forward, armor polished, insignia gleaming. "Human," the officer said, voice filtered through static, "you are charged with the unlawful containment and cooperation with a Class Omega predator. You will be taken for interrogation. The creature will be neutralized." Elias spat blood. "You think you can contain it? You don't even understand what it is." The officer didn't respond. He gestured to the troopers. The Zyran roared, chains glowing brighter, but even it couldn't break through the field this time. Its eyes met Elias's for a brief, electric moment, pure defiance burning in the golden light. "Don't fight them," Elias said weakly, though he knew it was useless. "They'll kill you." The alien's reply was a single guttural sound that resonated deep in Elias's chest, a promise or a vow, he couldn't tell. A sharp jolt of energy surged through the net and everything went white. When Elias opened his eyes again, he was staring at a ceiling of polished metal, sterile and cold. His wrists were bound, his armor stripped away. Through the translucent wall of the cell he saw movement, scientists, drones, the distant shape of the Zyran suspended in an energy cage. Even through the haze of sedatives he could feel it. The creature wasn't silent. Its gaze found him across the chamber, unbroken. They hadn't tamed it. They never would. He closed his eyes, his voice a whisper against the hum of machinery. "Hold on, my friend. I'm not leaving you behind." Outside, alarms began to sound. Something inside the containment field had just moved. Too fast. Too strong. The council had no idea what they just chained. The room was silent except for the hum of energy fields and the soft click of instruments measuring things too complex for human understanding. Elias sat restrained in a chair of cold alloy, wrists bound with magnetic cuffs that bit into his skin. The air was antiseptic, sharp and bright, too bright. Every time he blinked, he saw the reflection of the creature through the glass wall across from him. The Zyron hung suspended in a column of shimmering containment light, its limbs spread, armor plates twitching as electricity rippled through them. He'd seen fear before. In soldiers, civilians, even predators. But what he saw in the Zyron's eyes now wasn't fear, it was rage contained in silence, like a storm held behind glass. The council scientists circled it, muttering in half a dozen languages, their voices detached and clinical. They called it specimen, subject, threat. Not once did they use the word being. Elias struggled against the cuffs, earning only the sharp crack of electricity across his forearms. The pain cleared his head. He stared through the glass and called out, "Stop it! You're hurting it." A figure turned. The lead researcher, a lean Lurian with translucent skin and eyes like mercury, gave him a cool, indifferent look. "It's incapable of pain as you understand it, human. The neural inhibitors block suffering." "Then what do you call that?" Elias spat, nodding toward the Zyron's convulsing frame. The scientist adjusted a control on her wrist pad. "Resistance. Instinctive rejection of subjugation. Predictable for its kind." She turned back to the observation panel, ignoring him. The Zyron's body arched again as another pulse hit. The lights dimmed briefly before stabilizing. Its claws scraped against invisible barriers, sparks flaring where its carapace met the energy field. Elias could feel the sound more than hear it, like a low vibration in his bones. He whispered to himself, "Hold on." The door behind him opened. 2 guards entered, their armor marked with the sigil of the Galactic Enforcement Division. One pressed a hand to his shoulder, forcing him upright. The other unlocked the restraints only to snap on heavier ones attached to a long chain. "Prisoner Elias Ward," the first guard said, voice mechanical behind the helmet. "By order of the Council Tribunal, you will be interrogated regarding your unauthorized alliance with a Class Omega entity." Elias didn't resist as they dragged him across the sterile corridor. Through glass walls he glimpsed other containment cells, fragments of creatures he didn't recognize. Some were dead, some barely alive. A museum of things too dangerous to exist, all trapped in the name of control. They brought him to a chamber far smaller than the last. A table. 2 chairs. A single floating drone recording every breath. Across from him sat a council officer in ceremonial armor, the insignia of high authority gleaming on his chest. His expression was the same polished neutrality Elias had come to expect from bureaucrats who'd never seen combat. "You are aware," the officer began, "that aiding a Zyron violates every interspecies law ratified by the Council?" Elias met his gaze without flinching. "I didn't aid it. I saved it. It saved me." "There's a difference." The officer leaned back, unimpressed. "These creatures are incapable of loyalty. They recognize dominance, not mercy." "Then explain why it didn't kill me." The officer's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps it was studying you. Predators often play with prey before the final strike." Elias laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You think it's just an animal? But I've fought alongside soldiers who had less restraint than that creature." The officer ignored the remark. "It will be dissected, of course. There's much we can learn from its biology, strength, regeneration, neural pathways. The data will save thousands of lives." Elias's voice dropped low. "You're not saving lives. You're manufacturing control." That got a flicker of reaction, one quick tightening around the officer's mouth. "Idealism is a luxury the galaxy can't afford, Captain Ward. You of all people should understand order." Elias leaned forward, chains clinking softly. "Order built on cages always breaks." The officer rose. "Then perhaps you'll appreciate the irony when your beast learns that even its strength has limits." He turned and left. The door sealed behind him with a hiss. For a moment the room was silent again. Then the faint rumble came, distant, muffled through layers of steel. The lights flickered. The guards outside shouted something in Lurian dialect. Elias's heart began to race. He knew that sound. It was the same deep, resonant vibration he'd heard once before in the jungle, the warning growl of something unstoppable. The Zyron was awake. He stood, straining against the chains, trying to see through the observation window. The facility trembled as alarms began to blare. Red lights replaced the sterile white glow. Somewhere deep below, a containment field collapsed with the sound of tearing metal. Elias felt the vibration move up through the floor, a rhythm of impacts, heavy and deliberate. Not chaos. Purpose. The door burst open. The same two guards stumbled in, weapons drawn. "Get down," one shouted, pulling him toward the wall. Before he could move, the far wall crumpled inward like paper. The Zyron emerged through the breach, surrounded by smoke and shards of glass, energy flickering across its carapace like lightning. The containment harness still clung to its limbs, sparking violently. It had broken the restraints but not removed them. Its golden eyes found Elias immediately. The guards opened fire. Plasma bolts hit the alien's armor and scattered harmlessly. It moved with terrifying grace, a blur of claws and motion. One guard fell, the other thrown aside. Elias stumbled forward as the Zyron tore away the last of the harnesses. The air shimmered around it, energy field distorting the light. It reached down, claws closing around his chains. A sharp twist and the metal shattered. He stared up at it. "You came back for me." The creature made that same low sound, the one he'd heard in the jungle, deeper now, filled with something he almost recognized as relief. But there was no time for reunion. The sirens rose in pitch and a voice echoed through the intercom. "Containment breach in Sector 12. All personnel evacuate. Activate failsafe protocol." Elias looked around, realizing what that meant. They're going to vent the section. The Zyron tilted its head, sensing the danger even before he spoke. Together, they moved down the corridor, stepping over debris and fallen drones. Doors sealed ahead of them, but the aliens' claws made short work of reinforced alloy. Behind them, the air pressure dropped, a roaring wind chasing them as oxygen was sucked from the section. They burst into a secondary chamber, a hangar filled with research pods. Elias spotted one intact shuttle, small but flight-capable. There. The Zyron hesitated, glancing back down the corridor. More soldiers were coming. Elias could hear their boots, the metallic rhythm of train formation. He turned to the creature. "If you stay, they'll kill you. If you go, they'll follow. But if we leave together..." The alien didn't wait for him to finish. Moved. The hangar shuddered as it crossed the floor in seconds, clearing a path through soldiers that poured through the entrance. Elias ran behind it, grabbing a plasma sidearm from a fallen guard and covering their retreat. They reached the shuttle. Elias keyed the hatch and the interior lights flickered to life. The cockpit was small, barely room for one human pilot, but the Zyron crouched low, folding its limbs to fit. Elias slammed the hatch shut and dove into the pilot's seat. "Engines online," he muttered, fingers flying over controls. "Let's see if this thing still flies." The hangar doors began to close, lockdown protocols kicking in. He pushed the thrusters to maximum. The shuttle roared forward, scraping through the narrowing gap just as the doors sealed behind them. The ship spun into open air, engines screaming. Outside, the stars filled the sky, cold, endless, and free. Elias glanced over his shoulder. The Zyron was watching him, its eyes calm now, the golden light steady. He exhaled, tension leaving him in a long breath. "You broke every chain they had," he said softly. "But you stayed." The Zyron gave a single, slow blink. A gesture of understanding. Below them, the facility burned. Sirens still echoed faintly through the comm, but they were already a world away. Elias adjusted the course toward the dark horizon. "We can't stay in council space. There's nowhere they won't look." The creature tilted its head, then pointed one claw toward the star map glowing on the console, a region of uncharted systems. He smiled faintly. "You want to disappear?" A low rumble, the kind that vibrated through the hall. "Agreement." Elias nodded. "Then we vanished together." The ship streaked into the darkness, engines fading into the void. But even as they left the burning world behind, he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't escape. It was only the beginning. Somewhere beyond the stars, the council would regroup. They would hunt. They would tell stories of the predator that refused every chain, and the human who refused to abandon it. And in that quiet cockpit, beneath the pulse of starlight, man and monster sat side by side, already becoming a legend the galaxy would never forget. The stars outside the viewport had turned from scattered pinpoints to swirling streaks of light as the shuttle slipped into faster-than-light drift. Elias sat in the pilot's chair, eyes hollow from exhaustion, hands resting motionless over the controls. The hum of the engines was steady, rhythmic, almost soothing, but his mind refused to rest. Every blink brought flashes of the council facility, the glass walls, the screams, the way the Zyron's golden eyes had burned through containment light. Now those same eyes watched him from the co-pilot's seat. The creature sat still, its limbs folded with unnatural precision, its armor dimmed to a deep matte gray. It was silent but not absent. There was a presence in that silence, a sentience that weighed on the air, heavy but not oppressive. Elias finally broke it. "We should give you a name." The Zyron tilted its head, a gesture he'd come to understand as curiosity. "I mean," he said, rubbing the back of his neck, "I can't keep calling you it. Doesn't feel right." The alien blinked slowly. Then, with deliberate motion, it tapped one claw gently on its own chest, producing a faint resonant tone that almost sounded like speech. Elias frowned, then tried to mimic it. "Saa Rith?" The Zyron emitted the same tone, softer this time. He smiled faintly. "Sereth. Yeah, that fits." For the first time since their escape, the tension in his chest eased. Naming him, made the alien feel less like an anomaly and more like a companion. Still dangerous, still unknowable, but real. The shuttle's proximity sensors flickered. A warning light flashed crimson across the console. Elias straightened immediately. "We've got company." Sereth turned toward the viewfinder. 3 ships had dropped out of drift behind them, Council interceptors, their hulls sleek and silver, cutting through the void like blades. Elias cursed under his breath. "They tracked us faster than I thought." The radio crackled to life. "Unidentified vessel. Power down engines and prepare for boarding. You are harboring a galactic-level threat. Compliance will ensure leniency." He looked at Sereth. "They mean you." The Zyron didn't move, but the glow in his eyes deepened, golden light pulsing faintly in sync with the ship's warning tone. Elias hit the comm switch. "This is Captain Elias Ward, former Council Scout Division. You'll forgive me if I don't feel like being dissected today." Without waiting for a reply, he yanked the control lever. The shuttle spun, engines flaring blue as it veered toward an asteroid belt that filled the horizon like a storm of drifting knives. The Council ships followed. Plasma fire lanced past the cockpit, tearing through the darkness. The hull vibrated with each near miss. Elias's knuckles went white as he gripped the controls, threading the shuttle between tumbling rocks the size of cities. Sereth leaned forward, placing one clawed hand on the control panel. The lights flickered, and suddenly the ship responded as if alive, moving sharper, faster, as though guided by more than human reflex. Elias shot him a glance. "You're interfacing with it?" Sereth's eyes flickered in acknowledgement. "All right," Elias muttered, bracing himself. "Let's fly like we mean it." Together they wove through the asteroid field, every maneuver inches from destruction. Plasma bursts lit up the darkness like brief suns, carving through rock and debris. One of the pursuing ships clipped an asteroid and disintegrated in a bloom of light. 2 remained. Elias's heartbeat thundered. "We can't keep this up forever." Sereth looked toward the belt's far edge, where a faint distortion shimmered, a gravitational anomaly, a spatial rift twisting the fabric of light itself. Elias followed his gaze. "You want to go through that? That's suicide." The Zyron's stare didn't waver. Elias exhaled. "All right then. Suicide it is." He slammed the thrusters. The shuttle screamed forward, shaking violently as they neared the rift. The gravitational pull distorted space, warping sound and sight. One of the interceptors tried to follow, and was torn apart instantly, its hull stretched into ribbons of molten metal. Elias shouted over the rising roar. "If you've got any bright ideas, now's the time." Sereth stood, planting his claws against the control matrix. Energy rippled across his body, feeding into the ship itself. The entire vessel flared gold, surrounded by a shimmering field that looked almost alive. Elias's vision blurred. "You're protecting us." The last thing he saw before they crossed the threshold was the Council ship disintegrating behind them, and the stars bending inward into a tunnel of impossible color. Then there was silence. When Elias opened his eyes again, everything was dark except for the faint blue glow of emergency lights. The sensors were dead, the engines offline. Outside there were no stars, just a swirling haze of pale mist. Sereth sat across from him, unmoving. Elias rubbed his temples. "Where the hell are we?" The Zyron turned its head slowly, eyes scanning the void. Then he raised one hand and touched the glass viewport. The mist outside rippled, parting to reveal something vast and luminous, a construct of alien origin, suspended in emptiness. It was neither ship nor planet, but something between, a hollow sphere of metal and light rotating in silence. Elias stared, all replacing exhaustion. That's not on any map. Sareth made a low, resonant sound, something that almost resembled reverence. They docked. The sphere opened like an eye, revealing an interior bathed in gold. The air that rushed in when the hatch opened was warm, breathable. Elias stepped out cautiously, plasma pistol drawn. The interior was cathedral-like, vast, echoing, lined with strange symbols that pulsed faintly as they walked. Sareth moved ahead of him, slower now, almost hesitant. Elias realized the alien wasn't exploring, it was remembering. "You've been here before," Elias said quietly. Sareth turned, eyes softening. Then he pressed one claw to his chest again and pointed at the walls, at the glowing sigils. A pattern. A story. Elias followed the motion, tracing the carvings. The images showed figures that looked like Sareth, whole tribes of them, standing among stars. Then more. Fire. A collapse. The final carving showed one survivor drifting into darkness. Understanding hit Elias like a punch. "You're the last." Sareth lowered his head. The air felt heavier now, filled with ancient grief. Before Elias could speak, his communicator crackled. A familiar voice, cold and triumphant. "Elias Ward. You really should have surrendered when you had the chance." He froze. "No." The air shimmered, and from the open hatchway the council commander stepped through, flanked by armored drones. They'd followed through the rift. Somehow, impossibly, they'd tracked his drive signature. "Step away from the creature," the commander ordered. "Your cooperation will ensure you die quickly." Elias raised his weapon. "You people never learn." The drones fired. Plasma bolts tore through the golden light, striking the walls and scattering molten sparks. Sareth roared, a deep, primal sound that shook the entire chamber. The sigils around them flared to life, pulsing brighter and brighter until the whole structure seemed to awaken. The commander shouted, "Contain it, now." But it was too late. The energy surged through Sareth's body, through the walls, through the very air. Elias felt the vibration crawl under his skin. The alien wasn't just fighting, it was connecting, drawing on the power of its extinct kind. Golden light erupted from Sareth, expanding outward in a wave. The drones disintegrated instantly. The commander tried to flee, but the energy swallowed him, leaving nothing behind but silence. Elias shielded his eyes as the light engulfed him too, warm, blinding, and infinite. When it finally faded, he was lying on the floor. The chamber was calm again, bathed in soft glow. The walls no longer shimmered with chaos but with quiet, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat. Sareth stood in the center, breathing slowly, his armor faintly cracked, the light in his eyes dimmed but alive. Elias pushed himself up, chest aching. You didn't kill me." Sareth looked down at him. Then, slowly, he knelt, placing one clawed hand against Elias's shoulder. It was gentle. Grateful. Elias exhaled a shaky laugh. "Guess that makes us even." Above them, the sphere began to change, closing itself, sealing away the rift. Whatever power had awoken here, it was stabilizing, no longer a weapon but something preserved. Elias looked out through the viewport. The mist had cleared. Stars shone again, distant and endless. He turned to Sareth. "We can't go back. Not after this." The Zyran gave a slow nod. Elias smiled faintly. "Good. I was getting tired of running." He sat beside the alien, both of them watching the stars. In that moment there was no predator, no prey, just two survivors who defied every chain meant to break them. And somewhere far across the galaxy whispers would begin, of the human who tamed the universe's deadliest predator, or perhaps, of the predator who chose to stay. Either way, the legend had begun.